Do you need assistance?
Actually, yes! Your dang movie made me run out of tears. Do you have any I could borrow? The first trailer for The Wild Robot has earned the most dignified distinction I can give to something I've watched. It's one of the only recent ads that I did not skip. Look, you guys don't understand. During a single week, I've seen more ads than I know words in the English language. So the fact that it took a few minutes to actually pop a squat and watch the bot is very telling of this commercial's quality. There's an ominous beauty in its simplicity, similar to the nature that the MC adopts its lifestyle from. This graceful and sort of eerie rendition of What a Wonderful World, playing over dialogue-free scenes of a robot discovering something beyond its pre-programmed purpose. It felt like I was watching the preview for a cinematic magnum opus, an envelope-pushing movie event, which is a feeling that I rarely ever get from film teasers nowadays. Granted, I was a little put off by the later trailers adding things like the animals talking and some odd goofy humor, which kinda lessened the grandiose expectations I had, but there have been masterpiece movies with subpar marketing before, and I was still pretty hyped to see it. So in the end, what's the verdict? Well, you can read it for yourself. I'm still rehydrating over here. Dear freaking God, you guys, if you've ever wanted to see a film with the animation of Toy Story 4, the message of the Iron Giant, and the heart-throbbing warmth of 1,000 classic Disney films, you would be dumb as a rock. No, you would be brain dead as an avalanche if you didn't slam that money on the ticket counter and then slam that butt in a seat. I speak with zero hesitation when I say that Dreamworks has not looked, sounded, or felt better in a long, long time. The visuals are absolutely breathtaking, showing off the ever-changing states and vibes of nature, the warm and the cold, the calm and the stormy, and all done with some immaculate color choices and lighting. Elements like the water and sky are able to feel both welcoming and placid, as well as rough and terrifying when the scene calls for it, making for the perfect mix of relaxing and tense. The way Roz becomes more and more beat up and coated in greenery to show her transition into the title's namesake is fantastic. Even the animals with their cartoonish expressions and antics are able to be subdued and serious when they need to be. When you pair all of this with the incredible sound design and voice acting, some of which is able to evoke emotion in characters that don't even have a face, you have a true titan of the cinematic experience that you need to see in theaters to get the full effect. Speaking of those characters, the cast is quaint but super effective. Roz is like if you put Wally, Baymax, and this big fella under a microscope and specifically isolated all their cutest features. She starts off as an aggressively chipper pusher of her company's mantra, being left confused and eventually mutilated by the environment she found herself in. No, seriously, nature kicks her $1 million metal frame in during the first few minutes. All she wants to do is help, and the environment almost reduces her to scrap before she can even get an idea of what's going on. It's both hilarious and really sad. It's like seeing a loyal puppy get abused. And trust me, that's not the only bit of dark humor in this movie. But by the time she gets her first real task, aka taking care of a newly hatched gosling, she not only starts to get better acquainted with the animals that once rejected her, but she also becomes a lot more grounded, down to earth, and dare I say, human. It's really telling how much parenthood changes a person when even a cold, unfeeling machine can be given new life and meaning because of it. And by the end of the movie, if anything bad happened to Roz, I would have killed everything in that forest and then myself. As for the forest itself, it's got some interesting denizens. Fink starts off as your typical Nick Wilde type sly fox, only looking out for himself and honestly being a massive jerk to creatures great and small, until we learn about his reclusive lifestyle and lack of friends, which Roz is able to aid him with. Eventually, he becomes so open with his emotions that he's willing to turn into a blithering mess in front of Roz when she's leaving, just laying all his cards out on the table without even putting on a poker face. And it's honestly adorable. I've always been a huge fan of the jerk protagonist turning over a new leaf, and while Fink isn't my favorite character, he's definitely one of the most entertaining. And then you have Bright Bill, Roz's little runt, the wild robot's pride and joy, gifted to her under very tragic circumstances that I'll let you witness for yourself. Basically, little BB was born as a runt and by nature is unfit for survival. He likely would have been an hors d'oeuvre if left to his own devices, but thanks to Roz's assistance, he was not only able to live up to normal goose standards, but surpass them, leading the pack with his unique set of skills and intellect that he picked up from his unlikely parent. Sure, he would go through the typical moody teen phase and needs to learn the truth about his origins, but by the end he was able to contribute to his community in a way that wouldn't have been possible if he were just raised through normal means, and I think that's awesome. Plus, you gotta love the way he mimics his mother's robotic mannerisms both as a kid and an adult, which is both precious and hysterical. Though don't expect too many wholesome laughs throughout the film, cause trust me when I say, this humor can get dark. Very dark. I already talked about Roz getting abused and dismantled earlier in the movie, which is sad on its own, but then you got stuff like Fink nonchalantly knocking a crab into a boiling pot as we hear it slowly burn to death, or Pinktail the possum casually mentioning that one of her kids got eaten and even being kinda happy about it. Like, I get it, it's nature, and gags like this are meant to show how the animals are always at each other's throats before Roz brings them together. But geez, did moments like that catch me off guard. Even Roz's Baymax-style unfeeling dialogue has some bite at times, like when she up and calls baby Brightbill a burden and detrimental to her task. She just has no empathy or Nest-side manner at all, and it's honestly kind of amazing. It's great to see a movie with such Disney-esque touches telling jokes that aren't afraid to have some edge. Honestly, all of these elements would already make this movie a must-watch for anyone with good taste. But if you're looking for something more to chew on than just a simple story of blooming motherhood, this film doesn't just have you covered. It has you sheltered in a perfectly constructed sanctuary of sticks and stones. The jokes are what I'll be laughing at for the week, the heart is what I'll be feeling throughout the year, but the messaging is what I'll be looking towards probably forever. And yes, major spoilers coming up in case that wasn't obvious. As far as messages go, there are two which are upfront and obvious, themes that the film is basically built on. First is the idea of striving to be more than you were programmed to be. This is a mentality that Roz, Fink, and Brightbill all become products of by the end of the movie. Roz going from a basic helper robot to a mother and protector of all, BB going from an undercooked runt to a thriving, knowledgeable leader, and Fink going from a lone reclusive predator to a soft, nurturing caregiver. All three of these protags were born into an environment where a certain fate or expectation was laid out for them, and yet they all came out as defiant, triumphant icons that spit in the face of those preconceived fates. It's an oldie message, but a goodie, and one that can still apply to any generation that checks this film out. The second message is one I really appreciate, being that kindness is in fact a survival skill. So often I hear people pushing the mantra that it's a rough world out there and you gotta be an independent lone wolf in order to survive. But really think about it. A lot of individuals, be them human or animal, tend to reach their peak potential when they actually work together and look out for each other. In my eyes, with cooperation comes community. With community comes longevity, and with longevity comes a thriving lifestyle. Maybe that's a little too idealistic, but it's been proven throughout history that even two people collaborating will lead to them being happier, healthier, and more productive than they would have ever been apart. And if not for Roz's selfless programming and eventually selfless core nature, an entire group of individuals would have been left to the mercy of a deep freeze and probably wouldn't have even lived to see the next spring. She provided for them, and eventually they provided for her. It's a constant cycle of give and take, much like the circle of life you'd find in any natural environment. And if that's what the movie was going for, that's honestly genius. But I think my favorite theme is the most understated one. Something comforting that I think all people in this day and age need to hear. Despite the rise of artificial intelligence in both the industrial and creative fields, despite the multiple people fearing an eventual robot takeover extinguishing humanity, the truth is that no matter what the circumstances, humanity and AI cannot subsist without one another. As much as it hurts to say, even as we continue to expand, as more generations are bred and raised during certain periods, some aspects of humanity continue to be very limited. With more children being born, many of them are stuck with certain things like mental or physical disabilities that prevent them from surviving in a world not necessarily made for them. But with the help of certain AI and advanced technology, we're able to give them a proper life, and maybe even help them reach aspirations that their biology would have barred off to them. I mean, Brightbill was destined for the snack table the second he popped out of his egg, and yet with the help of a robot like Roz, he was able to soar to new heights, mirroring how AI is able to help people with similar disabilities. Additionally, there can be individuals that require very work-heavy demanding lifestyles to stay afloat, or even just people who have internalized blocks like social awkwardness or past trauma that can prevent them from forming ties with people in the traditional way. But luckily we have advanced tech and AI that allows us to connect with others and form bonds that otherwise would have been impossible. If we look at Fink, who was a social recluse that was damaged by his past, he managed to acquire a literal forest worth of friends and a wad of self-confidence through the aid of a helpful robot. This might be a bit of a stretch, but Fink's story can be applicable to how technology like phones, social media, and even chatbots can help us form natural connections with others that otherwise would have been hard for us. As much as people may fear them, AI and technology are useful tools that I'm glad the film doesn't demonize in any way. On the other side though, it's also true that AI cannot exist without the raw humanitarian resources it can pull from. In many ways, AI and technology are as beneficial and knowledgeable as the resources we put into them. And the great thing about humanity is that we are constantly defying things deemed to be impossible by our prior knowledge. No matter what we achieve in the current day, there will always be things to discover, odds to defy, norms to demolish, and creations to be made. There is only so much AI can pull from its limited well of human know-how before it dries up, both from a knowledge and creativity standpoint. This means that things like AI art and AI knowledge will never replace us because human ingenuity and ambition is limitless and will always come up with the means to achieve something that AI databases would have perceived to be impossible. The deep-rooted idea I pulled from this movie is that humanity could often perish without the assistance of AI, and AI will stagnate without the influence of humanity. Which brings up another aspect of nature in the form of the symbiotic relationship. We're meant to work together with AI, not have one completely replace the other. And as the movie shows, when both sides are able to find common ground, that is when both parties are able to thrive. I only saw the movie once, so maybe I'm missing a few things, but watching this movie not only brought me to tears 3 times, but also brought me some solace about this whole AI takeover that everybody's worried about. The world would be a better place if both sides just cooperated, and in most cases, we kinda have to if we want to advance. I think I speak for most people when I say that this is the kind of AI art we all want to see. Look, if you've watched this deeply into the video, I've clearly piqued your interest somewhat, so I am begging you, do yourself a favor and watch this movie, man. Even my 5 pages of words fail to do it proper justice. It's the rare breed of film where seeing it in theaters with loved ones is the only true way to get the full experience. Cause I can guarantee that by the movie's end, you'll be looking over to your left and right and realizing just how lucky you are to have those people. Take it from a guy who took his mom to see this movie and was basically doing the same thing. The Wild Robot is just a perfect universal story that's told beautifully and presented beautifully with messages that are conveyed beautifully. And if you've been feeling cynical about the never-ending rise of unoriginality in Hollywood or the rampant use of AI in the creative industry, then why not throw some pennies towards a movie that's original, heartfelt, and even comforting in regards to the future of mankind? You might find that it exceeds even your wildest expectations. And those are my thoughts on The Wild Robot. I was honestly blown away by how much I adored this movie, and it's nice to see another Dreamworks film that can go toe-to-toe with their certified bangers. I can only hope this movie brings the studio the force of revenue it deserves.
I see trees of green.
But as always, I want to hear what you guys think. Do you think The Wild Robot belongs in the upper echelon of animated artistry, or do you think I'm giving it way too much credit? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I hope to see you all real soon.